the lesson I want you to take from this is, even as much as I rant about how we should not, just be doing these things and how we should, be breaking the norms and it should be breaking conventional wisdom and all that, I was doing something that wasn't consistent with the way I wanted to show up because it was this thing I had been taught, because it was the status quo. So I'm telling you this story partly because I'm one who will always own up when I make a mistake. I'm going to do that. And so I think it was important for me to apologize for doing something that I believe was wrong. But just as importantly, I'm doing it because I believe it will help you to understand that this is something that will be challenging. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 183 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's show because today's show is one of those moments where I'm going to give you kind of a mindset shift maybe, but also in the context of me giving a mea culpa, me giving an apology for where I've done something that I recognize that I wasn't doing right. And I need to apologize to you as my audience and just more generally. And what we're going to be talking about today, that the general topic is that the status quo is hard to give up. In other words, we often don't recognize that we're doing things because it's the status quo, and we don't even recognize that we're doing it. And it may not be the best way to go. And so what I'm going to do is help you unpack how to find when you're doing that and how to decide whether you should keep doing it or not. And that's kind of what I think is the important piece. So it's not just, oh, this is a mistake or making mistakes. I'm going to help you figure out where you might be doing that and how to get out of it. Now, and in the meantime, you're going to get to hear me talk about how I screwed something up. And so I don't know about you, but I think that's probably something you'll want to hear, because hearing Bobby talk about something he screws up seems to be one of the more popular things I do. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Before we do, this episode is brought to you by my 3-day virtual event, Badass Online Marketing Live, which is coming up the first weekend of December. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but we're going to help, and kind of my goal is to help you and everyone else design your perfect business. Not mine, not what I believe it should be, not based on my beliefs, but you figure out what makes sense for you, not because it's the status quo, not because I tell you to do it, but because it makes sense for you, for your personality, for what you want, etc. And so how to create that kind of business and also make money doing it consistently. That's the goal for the event. It's 3 days. It's going to be a lot of value and a lot of fun. You can find out more by heading to bobbyklink.com/bomb live. That's BOM live. bobbyklink.com/bomb live. So now with that, let's dive in to this episode. And I'm going to start with my mea culpa. I'm going to start with me apologizing for where I've been doing something wrong. And I recognized I was doing something wrong. And I recognized I was doing something wrong because, or the reason I was doing something wrong was because I was basically just doing the status quo and following the advice I'd been given without even realizing that's what was happening. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it's this funny thing because I do all of this where I talk about, oh, don't just do things because people told you, but even I am doing that sometimes. And so I want you to understand, and part of me doing this is to help you get that this is hard, but also so that you understand it's not something that I'm saying I've mastered. There's still things I'm doing that I probably shouldn't be doing. This is an ever evolving practice. Just kind of like they say yoga, it's a practice. It's not something you do. It's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with marketing. It's a practice. You're going to get better at it. You're going to have things you mess up. You have to constantly be trying to get better though. That's really the big thing. And so let's talk about this mea culpa. It has to do with something that actually, in a lot of ways, I think it's one of the more popular things I do. I mean, like there are hashtags about it. People seem to love it. I'm talking about my guru rants. Now, if you haven't heard one of these guru rants, this is where I talk about things, and it's largely kind of deconstructing what the gurus are teaching us about how to market and all of that. And I do them, and I realized that I was doing them wrong. And here's what I mean by that. I have come across in those as if I'm attacking the gurus, as if I'm attacking the people. It's personalized. And it's not personalized in the sense that I name a particular person. I never do that. But, I mean, if you listen, you're like, well, so-and-so taught me that, and and so it seems like I'm attacking that person. And it's something that like Katie, my integrator, and I have talked about, like we've been, there's been something off about it for us. Now, people love it. I love talking about the what's wrong with marketing orthodoxy, the things that we're learning, why we shouldn't be doing these things. I mean, I love I'm going to get back to it in the new year, Bobby Ruins Marketing, where I literally kind of deconstruct things in marketing, basically conventional wisdom and all of that. I love doing that. But we recognized recently really that what was bothering me and Katie, again, by the way, side note, one of the great things about Katie is that she and I, she's my integrator, but she and I, we have the same general kind of core values, all of those things. We're just kind of in sync. And so it was bothering her. It was bothering me. We talked and figured out it was that it seemed as if I was talking about the people. And if you think about it, when I'm doing that, it seems like I'm attacking my friends, because a lot of the friends I have in this industry, the peers, the people I talk to, my mentors, my coaches, I mean, they're gurus. And so it can come across, and it had come across like I was attacking them as people. And that didn't feel right. And what I'll tell you is I thought about it and I tried to figure it out. And what I figured out was it came from the status quo conventional wisdom of all things that I had learned when I had kind of entered this space. Specifically, one of the things that I was taught, and you may have been taught this or not, but one of the things I was taught very early on was that it helps to have a villain. It helps to create an us versus them in marketing. This was something that I got. For the life of me, I have no idea where I picked that up. So, I mean, again, I definitely can't attack the person who taught me that, because I don't even remember who that was. But it is something I learned in this space. And when I think about that now, first of all, I think it's dumb. I don't know that it helps me with marketing. I don't know that it helps me to attack, to kind of do personalized attacks. But you know what? Screw it. I don't care if it actually works as a marketing technique. And here's why. It's not consistent with my values. It's not consistent with what I believe I should be doing as a person. I believe we need less us versus them. I'm recording this election week. Obviously, there's been a lot of us versus them right now. I believe that we as a world, we as Americans, we as whoever, need to get out of the tribalism of it's us versus them. And yet I was doing that in my marketing. And for that, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I should not have made it seem personal, even though often I kind of did it in a joking way, like after my recent training where I talked about how, why most online entrepreneurs are stuck in the 50s. We joked that the gurus came to strike back because I kept getting, my mic muted a couple times. But the problem is, and I experienced this, that I believe some of my friends, some of my peers in the industry saw what I was saying and they took it personally. And I can't blame them because I wasn't talking about ideas. I was talking about the gurus who are teaching you this are. And that wasn't fair because candidly, I don't know why. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what's in their heart. I don't know any of that. And so one of the things that Katie and I came to in talking this out is, we're not doing that anymore. I'm going to talk about ideas. I'm going to talk about how I believe, that this marketing concept is wrong. I believe that this idea is wrong. I'm going to talk about all that. I'm not going to stop ruining marketing, as I put it. That is going to continue. But I'm not going to personalize. And I'm not going to rant about gurus. That I will not be doing. Because I don't think it's important, but that it's right. But the lesson I want you to take from this is even as much as I rant about how we should not, just be doing these things and how we should, be breaking the norms and it should be breaking conventional wisdom and all that, I was doing something that wasn't consistent with the way I wanted to show up because it was this thing I had been taught. Because it was the status quo. So I'm telling you this story partly because I'm one who will always own up when I make a mistake. I'm going to do that. And so I think it was important for me to apologize for doing something that I believe was wrong. But just as importantly, I'm doing it because I believe it will help you to understand that this is something that will be challenging. Okay, so I want you to get that. So with that, now I'm going to shift because hopefully I've gotten your attention. Bobby talking about, hey, I screwed something up. Hopefully it's something that will really get your attention. But now with that, I want to talk about why it is that this happens. Why is it that it's so hard to break out of the status quo? And the reason is very simple. Most of us, the majority of our life, we are operating on autopilot. Now, if you've done any meditation or mindfulness work, you've recognized that we do that, like just every day. Like our thoughts are on autopilot, everything. Like, I used to do, back when I had an office outside my home, I would walk because it was about 3/4 of a mile from my home. And at some point I started doing like walking meditation. And it was weird because it hit me in doing this that like before I was doing that, I wasn't noticing anything on that walk. I wasn't even there because my mind was so engrossed in other things. I was just on autopilot. Now, you may have had a similar experience. A lot of people talk about it with driving. If you have a commute that you do every single day, a lot of people talk about how one day they wake up, but all of a sudden they get to where they're going and they're like, wow, I don't remember the last 15, 20, whatever, however long the commute is of my life. And they're scared. Because it's like, whoa, was I literally that absent while I was driving? And it happens. And what I'll tell you is that in everyday life, that's important. If we were 100% mindful and conscious of everything happening in our life all day, every day, we would be overwhelmed, especially today because we're being hit and inundated with stimuli. But we're also doing it in our business. Like there are things that we've been taught that just become second nature, that they're just, it is. I mean, it is what it is. But then it gets so ingrained that it becomes dogma. And it becomes dogma that we like literally get attached to, where if someone questions it, it makes us uncomfortable and maybe even mad. I mean, seriously, when I posted recently about, and I was just having fun about how I didn't think launching was the best way to go. And oh my goodness, some people got mad at me affirmatively because I was questioning something that is dogma. Now, most people are just like, well, that's Bobby being Bobby. But some people I felt really got mad about it. And, again, part of that is part of my mea culpa. I think in some of the ways I was talking, even in some of those threads, I was not doing it well. And I was kind of talking in a guru rant, which I should not have done. But I think some people were just like, no, but this is what we do. This is what we're supposed to do. This is how it works. And so I think that does happen because things become dogma. And I'm not going to make this about launching. That's not the point of this podcast, this episode at least. But I want you to recognize that a lot of the things that are just, well, we do it that way. That is us operating on autopilot. And again, it's one of those things. I'm questioning these things all the time, and I'm not questioning all of them. I just want to be honest. I'm still doing. I haven't figured it out, but I'm sure there are things that I'm still doing that I'm only doing because it's what I've been taught, et cetera. And so, I'm just doing it. But slowly but surely, I'm trying to weed those out. And what I'm trying to do is to actually ask myself questions. And that's what I want to help you with, is how do you ask the questions that might help you to figure this out, to think it through, to maybe decide whether you should keep doing that, or if it's just, well, that's the status quo and maybe I ought to rethink this. So first you have to identify. And what I want to say is, I think of my daughter who is almost 7, and she asks why a lot. And it can be annoying. And I feel sorry for my parents because I recognize I was even worse than them. They would say, well, you have to do this. And I would say, why? And then they'd give me a reason. I would say, why? And then they would give me another reason. I would say, why? And eventually they would say, because I said so, right? Eventually it got to that point because I was that annoying kid who asked why nonstop. And I was probably more annoying than most kids, but I think most kids ask why because they're trying to understand why it is we're doing something. And they're trying to kind of come to these ideas and figure the world out. What happens, though, is eventually when we grow up, we stop doing that. And when we get into work, we get into business, we stop doing that. We stop asking why. We stop asking those questions because we're on autopilot, right? We're out of this mode of constantly trying to figure things out, so we're on autopilot. So what you need to do is, if you're doing something in your business, I want you to ask a very simple question. Why am I doing this? And there might be multiple answers. But what I'll tell you is that because so-and-so told me to is not good enough. Even if it's something I told you to. What I want to be clear is, me telling you to do something isn't a reason to do it. Now, I obviously think what I'm saying is probably right, but you should question me. You should question what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. And if it doesn't feel right to you, you shouldn't do it. But you should not be saying, well, so-and-so said so, and that's why I'm going to do it. You should understand why they told you to do it. And you should be able to say, okay, well, does that make sense to you or not? Similarly, though, just because that's how it's always been done isn't the right answer either. Because what I'll tell you is, especially in the space we're in, I believe that there is a large echo chamber. And the large echo chamber, I mean, we can talk about echo chambers and all these different things, but I would suggest that, and I don't have payments of this, I don't have evidence of this, but I would suggest that what probably happened was, way back in the early days of the internet online marketing world, some people found some things, tried it out, and it worked. And so then they taught it to other people who taught it to other people who taught it to other people, et cetera. And so that's why we're doing it. Because 20 years ago, this worked for, Joe Blow or whoever that it was that originally tried it. I candidly believe that's why we do so much of what's called direct response marketing. In other words, the active selling, not building brands, not that, but literally, hey, I tell you to do it and you do it right now, because I believe that the early internet marketers who then taught their other folks who taught their other folks, et cetera, were people, they learned from the people who made their money by sending kind of direct response newsletters and writing ads to get people to buy things out of newspapers and things like that. So again, they were learning from direct response marketers. So that's what they did. That's what worked. And that's what they taught. That doesn't mean it's the only way. That doesn't mean it's the right way. They're teaching what they had always done. And if you think about it, if you ask, is because we've always done it that way normally a good answer? The answer is no. I mean, because that's the way we always did it, we're right, we would be in the Stone Ages. So we need to be asking a deeper question and saying, I don't care if that's the way it's always been done. I want to know why it was originally done that way. And if you can't give me a good reason of why it was originally done that way, So that's kind of what you're trying to figure out is you've got to ask the question, why am I doing this, and figure out what it is that is leading to you. And again, if it's because someone told you to, or if it's always been done that way, you need to go deeper and say, okay, well, what is the logic behind that? You've got to get to that basic logic, the basic rationale for doing it that way. And once you get to that, then you do the work of weeding out the things that you shouldn't be doing anymore. And you do this with two filters. One, does this match up with marketing fundamentals? And this is something that you may not like hearing because you're like, wait. I have to know marketing fundamentals? Yeah, you do. I talked about this back on episode 176 about why you need to know the whys of marketing. If you haven't listened to it, I'm going to suggest you go back to it. But what I want you to get is we are marketers. Like, I'm no longer a lawyer. I am an online marketer whose product is related to the law, or I am an online marketer whose product relates to email, or you get it. And it's this concept, if you've never read the E-Myth Revisited, there's this concept of people get into business because they're good at being a technician, but being a successful business owner is not about being a technician. It's about the business stuff. And in our case, we are marketers. We are building marketing businesses online. So you got to understand marketing. That's what I've said, and I did another episode right in there about why there is no instruction manual for marketing, because there is no one way to do it. So that's what I want you to kind of get to and understand. And that's what I'm saying. So you've got to understand marketing fundamentals, and you got to ask yourself, is this consistent with marketing fundamentals? And if it's not, that's kind of get over it right there. And what I'll tell you is if you didn't catch my training, one of the things that really we have to shift away from is that we need to understand the current ideas about marketing and marketing concepts, because this sell, this notion that we have to create demand for our product because without selling, there will not be enough demand for our product, is an outdated model of marketing. It's a model of marketing that the rest of the marketing world basically started to get rid of in the late 50s. And it didn't all go away, right? But it started to. Now, yes, there are still infomercials that do that stuff. But I don't know about you. I don't want to be an infomercial. I want to be a brand. And so you need to be understanding what are those things. And part of the things are like that marketing is not all about selling. It's about building connections. It's about building relationships. It's about recognizing the value and interconnectedness of everything you do. And it's about taking stands on things that matter to you. All of those things are part of current marketing. And you need to be well-versed in it and understand those things. So that's the first filter. Is this reason why I'm doing it consistent with basic marketing fundamentals? If not, don't do it. If it is, you got to ask yourself the next question. And you can ask these in either way. And this is where, candidly, Katie and I nixed Guru Rants. The question is it consistent with your values? Is it consistent with the way you want to show up in your business? And you might be saying, well, why is that different? Well, what I'll tell you is I might be able to make more sales, at least in the short run, by doing some things that are simply not consistent with the way I want to show up in this world. To me, my values, my ability to put my head on my pillow at the end of the night and say, I can live with myself, I am doing what I should be doing in this world, are more important than making every last dollar. And so I believe that we all need to be doing those things. We all need to be asking those questions. Now, one of the things I teach people is that you ought to have core values for your business, but some of it is just as much about knowing what you believe to be right and wrong. And that's where the Guru Rants were really a problem. Because it's not consistent with my personal beliefs about the way I should act, for me to be personalizing things, for me to be doing things that might, be personalized against a person, because I don't know why someone does something. I could speculate, but I cannot get inside of their mind. And for me to judge or come across as judging is not consistent with who I am. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, there are extreme cases. I'm not going to say that, there would never be a case where I would judge someone. But, judging someone for how they market is not something that I'm going to do. Condemning something for something like that, not what I'm going to do. It's just not who I am. Okay? And so I want that clear. And this is an important thing, because I want you to get that when you're living your life, when you're building your business consistent with your values, things get easier. Because you don't have to hide. You don't have to sit there and you won't be uneasy. And again, like I said, it was this, we weren't sure why, but I knew that something was making me a bit uncomfortable. And it wasn't the results, because again, I can take the results. If someone gets mad at me, I can deal with that. People get mad at me all the time. I can't control whether someone gets mad at me. I can only control what I do. And I always want to act consistent and in line with my values, with what I believe. Those are the things that ultimately I have to do to be able to live with myself. And so I would suggest that you ought to do the same things. And again, I'm not challenging you to do it. I'm not going to tell you what your values are, what your values shouldn't be. Maybe this is not the kind of thing that you would have a problem with. It is for me. And this is the important thing. Everyone's values will be different. So everyone's lines of what is okay and what's not okay will be different. That's okay. And if someone tells you, well, that's a limiting belief, no, that's BS. To me, not attacking people, not villainizing people. And again, no one has said this to me. I want to be clear. That's not about a limiting belief. It's not about me being afraid, because you guys know, if you're here, I am not afraid to stir the pot. But my values say I'm not going to do that. And so I've decided I'm not going to be doing that. But anyway, those are the two things. And what I want to encourage you to do is think about what you're doing in your business. Think about how you're building your business and ask yourself, why am I doing these things? And again, what I would do is I would start by asking, like, if there are things that make you uncomfortable, if there are things you don't like doing, if there are things that you struggle with, if there are things that block you, ask yourself that question. Why am I doing this? What is the reason for it? And then figure out the reason and figure out if it meets those two tests. Now, I don't want to tell you, this is not an excuse to not do work. I want to be clear. This is not an excuse to not do hard things. We have to do hard things. But sometimes when something is hard, it's because there's something not aligned. And finding where things aren't aligned is an important part of building a business that you will actually love building and that you'll actually love running. And that is kind of the nirvana moment. If you can get to a point where you are loving what you do because everything you're doing is in alignment, things click. I'll tell you, one of my friends, Emily Aarons, I don't remember if it was when I was on her podcast or she was on mine. We were talking about this, about how, my business sometimes seems like to be serendipity. She said, well, that's just because you're in alignment. You are in a state of flow constantly because you're doing what is right for you. And I think that was a valuable, incredible insight that I got from her. And I appreciate her sharing that with me every day. So that's what I want for you. So figure out the things that aren't clicking, aren't working, and ask the questions. And again, don't use this as an excuse to not do hard stuff. But if it's not in alignment with your values, say, okay, how can I do something similar that is in alignment? And again, for me, it's a simple switch here. I'm not doing guru rants. I'm simply going to talk about the outdated ideas and what's wrong with this strategy, with this idea, with this conventional wisdom, without personalizing it, without drawing assumptions about, the people teaching it or anything like that. Not going to do that. That's my resolution. And I think it just means, hey, I can be just as effective and do it 100% in alignment with my values. So that's it. That's what I've got for you today. Again, the status quo is hard to get out of, but the first step is figuring out what are those things you're just doing for the sake of it. Ask why you're doing it. Get to the root reason, and then ask those two questions. Is it consistent with marketing fundamentals? And is it consistent with my values? If so, do it. If not, cut it out. So that's it. I will see you again next week. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.